ladies, gents, and non-binary mates, and welcome back to Beauty in the Bookcase, where we take a book and we make a look. So when I first started my channel back in March, one of the things that I wanted to really focus on was on reviewing works by newer authors and, more importantly, by more diverse authors. I studied English and creative writing. I love the classics, but I was kind of stuck in the classics. So it was kind of my mission both this year and with the channel to venture out into more diverse books, which is why today is all about my sister, the serial killer. This book, which was written by Oyinkan Braithwaite, was actually recommended to me on a Facebook group, like a book club kind of group. And of course, the title immediately caught my attention. Duh. Something you may not know about me is that I am actually quite interested in true crime and serial killers and all that type of morbid stuff. But yeah, like most of us, my fascination is still, quite removed. I don't really think about the fact that there really could be like a serial killer living next door or even in my own family. Spooky, I know. But Oyinkan kind of forces us to put ourselves in that uncomfortable situation of what would we do if we had a sibling who was a killer? And what would it be like to have a monster under your own roof? While it's quite easy to sort of think of serial killers as these demonic, awful people, not saying they're not, we often think of those socially awkward outcasts who were always a little bit off. But what about killers like Charles Manson or even Ted Bundy? That type of attractive and or charming killer is the one we are dealing with in this book. Known for her stunning good looks, Adjula is a special kind of serial killer. She doesn't really seem to premeditate or really think about what she's gonna do at all. It's almost like murder just happens around her. However, our story is not so much about how or why Adjula kills, but about her sister, Corredes. So, Corredes is quite a normal person, except for the fact her sister's a serial killer. She is a nurse. She lives at home with her sister and her mom. Their dad has passed away due to suspicious circumstances, to say the least. But really, aside from, the serial killing sister and the mysterious death of her father, there's not much that would make her stand out. I mean, she just goes to work. She's at an age where she's hoping to marry, and she has a crush on a doctor that she works with. She genuinely often describes herself in quite a plain way and has a tendency to just constantly compare herself to her sister, something that we can easily assume happened a lot to her while growing up. Her tattered self-esteem is most likely the result of having parents, or at least a mother, who consistently doted on Adjula while not really, having the same energy for Corredes. And this kind of tense and kind of complex family dynamic is the first thing I want to talk about today. So, of course, one of the main mysteries throughout the novel is what happened to the dad and why. Well, I don't think it's ever actually kind of outright stated, but it's definitely heavily implied that Adjula killed her father and that was her first kill. But we don't know that, that's all speculation. However, there is kind of this idea of setting up Adjula's tendencies, much less as, her being a murderous psychopath, and more out of it being self-defense, as when we get to know about their dad, he's quite the violent figure. He would often be physically abusive to them and to their mother, and he was just kind of an all-around intimidating character. And even though he's not even physically present for the actual plot of the book, there's this portrait of him hanging in the background, which is this constantly looming presence, and there's kind of a darkness to it at all times. Of course, potentially hinting at him not being the best person. And it's kind of hard to sort of picture Ajula as some like senseless psychopath, because I mean, yeah, she's annoying. I honestly found her pretty exhausting. But to be fair, for as, you know, annoying as she could have been, she's just kind of this carefree young woman who just kind of seems careless, but not exactly evil. She just likes to party and live life for herself. And, you know, there's nothing inherently bad about that. Korede, on the other hand, just seems to constantly be burdened with the responsibility of being a parent to Ajula. I guess sort of filling in the role of their father. Not exactly in a disciplinarian sense, but more so as her sister's keeper. She kind of is made to answer for Ajula's behavior. And okay, as the youngest kid, yes, we definitely got away with a lot of things, but I feel like Ajula got away with too much, which, you know, might also then translate into maybe she isn't this like self-defense killer, but she's just kind of entitled and thinks she can do no wrong. So yeah, getting away with things as the younger sibling, pretty normal. Getting away with murder though, that's kind of sus. As I mentioned a little bit ago, as young girls, Ajula and Korede are both awaiting, you know, marriage. It's kind of the time for it. But while Ajula is kind of just in a phase where she just wants to meet people and she's not really ready to settle down, Korede does want to settle down, especially with this doctor from the hospital, and she thinks she'd make a good housewife given her cooking and cleaning abilities and her maternal behavior. I'm not saying this is what women are supposed to do. I'm just saying this is kind of the expectation that's set up in the book. But again, she doesn't think she really stands a chance because anyone who could potentially be a match for her would eventually have to meet her family, and she kind of just feels like once they meet Ajula, it's kind of game over. There's kind of this weird dynamic where Korede is currently the hope of the family in a, you know, financial and like just logistic sense. She seems to kind of be the one keeping them all together. But at the same time, her mother is much more concerned with Ajula getting married than with Korede. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just an odd kind of tension and like a bit of a dichotomy. And we can see this a lot just in the way their mom treats them, especially when Ajula does have guys over. You know, Ajula is the queen, right? She's treated wonderfully and everything's catered to her, whereas then Korede has to kind of be the one to go and serve everybody and get the food and make sure that everything's like ready. I mean, they do have kind of like a housekeeper. I think they call her a server girl or something. Anyway, they have somebody else to help in the home, but you know, Korede still takes up a lot of the household duties. The family relationships made me pretty sad. Their mom is constantly trying to be like, oh no, Ajula like adores you and she just wants to be like you and blah blah blah, but we don't really see that in her behavior. It's just kind of like Ajula sees Korede as just there to clean up her messes, right? She can do whatever she wants, and then if things get too sticky, her sister will deal with it and she won't have to face any consequences. Honestly, there were so many times throughout this book where I just wished that Korede would just put her foot down and just say no to Ajula and just be like, honestly, sort it out yourself. It's your problem. you have to grow up at some point. But whether it was really out of, you know, sisterly love, or whether it was just because she was afraid that she'd get in trouble if she didn't, you know, cover her sister's ass, Korede just keeps doing way more than she should have to for somebody who doesn't really seem that appreciative of her. You know, while I genuinely do admire her loyalty to her family, she definitely deserved better. I mean, from the get-go, we just see kind of like everything being piled on her. While honestly, I don't even know what her mom does all day. I have no idea. We don't really get much of that. I assume they had money, so the mom doesn't have to do anything. Ajula just kind of seems to be this carefree party girl, whereas Korede just seems to be busting her ass all the time. And of course, from page 1, the second Ajula kills her first confirmed victim, she calls Korede to come over and just like clean everything up for her and help her dispose of the body. Which, like, are you kidding me? Now, what's interesting about this first murder we see is that this guy seemed to be some type of like a poet. He wasn't really like a celebrity, at least not, you know, in the sense that we think of celebrities, but he was popular enough that his disappearance caused a bit of a stir, especially with his family who would not let up. This goes so far that Korede's car gets taken away, and it's at this situation that we think, is she gonna have to be responsible and go to jail for her sister? Like, that would be so messed up. And the sad thing is, the entire time you kind of feel like she's gonna do it anyway. You want her to throw her sister under the bus, but you feel like she has such a sense of responsibility over her sister that, and things just kind of always seem to go against her, that you just feel like she'd have to just confess to something she didn't do. Now, this sibling rivalry / relationship does not get better when Ajula decides she's, you know, suddenly super interested in the hospital where her sister works, and she starts showing up. And of course, she meets the doctor that Korede is into. And of course, the doctor gets the hots for her. I was so mad. Like, when I tell you that I was so mad, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I had such high hopes for this dude. Crushed, okay? Crushed. And she, you know, she doesn't really confess her feelings to her sister or to anyone in her family, because she just feels like at the end of the day, even if she did, she'd just be expected to put her feelings aside and just suck it up, right? Because her sister had an opportunity to get married into a doctor of all people, right? And she sure was trying to be accepting of this, even though she definitely didn't have to be. And honestly, the toxicity of her sister within this relationship, and even Ajula's relationship with Korede, is so astronomical. I mean, she's constantly making up these lies about Korede to, I'm gonna call him Dr. Douche. And like, it's just so frustrating, honestly. The entire time I'm just like, I fucking hate this girl. And I hate the doctor too. I just felt so bad for Korede. She just seemed like such a good person, and things were just very unfair for her. Yet, you know, Korede constantly keeps lying for her sister, except when she kind of decides that saving Dr. Douche's life might be, you know, more important than preserving her sister's reputation. But even then, she's accused of being crazy and jealous and whatever, and, you know, not being supportive, which is like, she's been anything but. Like, y'all don't understand how mad this entire like dynamic made me. But speaking of this very awful doctor guy, you know, the other thing that, because she had such a complicated and almost non-existent relationship with her family throughout the novel, Korede is constantly trying to develop lasting and meaningful connections. And one of the people she is trying to do this with, of course, is Dr. Douche. I mean, she's literally going above and beyond. She always tries to find an excuse to talk to him, or she'll like cook him food and bring it to work, and you know, doing all that type of stuff you do when you like have a crush on a guy and you just kind of want to impress him, but without having to be like, hey, I have feelings for you. You know, she's kind of like hoping she can make him fall in love. And, you know, to be fair, at the start, we think he's a pretty decent guy. He seems very nice. She kind of describes him as like, you know, not like the other guys in Nigeria. Yeah, and you kind of start really hoping, right, that yes, she might have a sister who's a serial killer, and yes, her family dynamics might be difficult, but hey, maybe she will be able to like fall in love with this guy, and she'll be able to leave her home and sort of distance herself and all that. But of course that doesn't happen because this isn't a fairy tale. As I mentioned before, when Ajula enters the picture, Dr. Douche just starts treating Korede like garbage, honestly. They lie and say that the cook in the family is Ajula, and he's just constantly being like, yeah, you're just jealous of your sister, or like, why are you trying to ruin her happiness, or blah, 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 blah. And he's just such a jerk. And I'm not saying that everything that Korede did was like 100% cool, but like, they have been friends for a while, right? Like, why would she have to be like, why would she lie to him? Why would, I don't know. No, it's like nobody's really understanding that Korede has had to live in her sister's shadow her whole life, and suddenly now she's invaded the one place where she wasn't just Ajula's sister. You know, what is she supposed to do? I don't know. I'm not gonna spoil what happens between Dr. Douche and Ajula and Korede for you guys, but it's a ride. This doctor is kind of the only living person she tries to really have a relationship with. What I mean by that is, you know, after she like disposes of the body, cleans up the murder and everything, she gets really interested in this guy that Ajula had killed, the poet. So she finds out that he had a blog, and she really enjoys his poetry, and she kind of starts building him up in her mind, and she almost can't like reconcile how a guy like that would be with somebody like Ajula. While Ajula just swears up and down that the murder was an act of self-defense, this version of this poet that Korede has built is untouchable. He'd never do something to want. And to be completely honest, had he lived, it would have been really interesting to see if a relationship between them would have developed beyond just like this admiration from a distance. Granted, of course, that would make the whole story very different, but I don't know. I think it's very interesting seeing her kind of go down this rabbit hole and having this character constantly, again, like the father, be this presence in the background that Korede is trying to build a relationship with. And perhaps is because, you know, he's dead. He was murdered by Ajula, so he obviously isn't going to be like doting on her. So maybe it's just kind of like that desire to be close to somebody who for once isn't going to prefer your sister to you. And the last person that Korede kind of builds a relationship with is this coma patient at the hospital. So of course, because he was in a coma and nobody thought he was ever going to wake up, she feels comfortable talking to him about things that she obviously can't tell anybody else because her sister would go to jail, and so she probably would too for, you know, being an accessory, you know, an accomplice, whatever. So she often just starts visiting this guy because his family had stopped visiting, and you know, she kind of feels sorry that he doesn't have anybody, and she's like, great, well, this guy's not gonna remember anything I say, and he's probably not gonna wake up anyway, so might as well take advantage of the situation. Now, the problem is that he does wake up and he does remember a few things. However, he does actually seem like quite a good friend to her. And, you know, but the relationship overall was pretty wholesome. Once he wakes up, even though there's all this like family drama going on around him with his family, not Korode's, they still continue to have this bond. And to be honest, it's really nice seeing somebody actually be invested in Korode and care about her and, you know, just putting in the effort. But of course, once he leaves the hospital, even though he gives her his phone number for them to, you know, continue their friendship, she kind of just like drops it. Although in fairness, I don't know that I would keep any alive friends if I had a serial killing sister. So what's it all about? Well, at its core, I think this book is a lot less about murder and a lot more about identity, just family and connections. It's really nice to see Korode figuring herself out and sort of traversing these complex family dynamics that, without the serial killing aspect, can be quite relatable to a lot of people. While I would have loved an ending where Korode either met somebody or she ended up with the coma guy, or I don't know, something nice happened, I'm actually quite fond of bittersweet endings. Endings where something kind of nice happens, but it's still realistic. Overall, though, I think I'd give this book about a 4 out of 5. I think it managed to make something that could have been quite dark much lighter. I think it without, you know, making fun of it or, you know, being absurd. I think it also managed to take quite an interesting twist on what could have been a generic serial killer story. And I think it did a really good job at, you know, showing these very relatable and realistic elements that, you know, the reader can still connect to, and just creating characters that we could root for and that, you know, we kind of had conflicting emotions about. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure to leave a like and let me know down in the comments below how you would feel if you had a serial killing sibling. Please make sure to subscribe for more videos like these and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when I upload. And also be sure to follow me on all of my social medias, which are down in the description below, and I will see you guys next time.